My mother-in-law and sister-in-law took me to a yacht party and mocked me, saying, "Try not to spill anything, you're not used to class." I casually said, "That's funny, this is my yacht." Their laughs died the second the captain saluted me. My 39 female, ex-husbands, 41 male mother and sister always looked down on me because I came from a working-class background and built a small organic grocery business. After our divorce, they invited me to a yacht party, clearly to humiliate me. I said nothing when they mocked me for not being used to class, then casually mentioned that the yacht we were standing on was mine. The captain confirmed it. Their faces went pale and they left early. Sweetest silence I've ever known. I married into a very old-money Maryland family. I'm from Annapolis, born and raised. My parents worked hard. My dad was a mechanic and my mom ran a daycare out of our home. We didn't have much, but we had enough. I was taught to work hard, save, and treat everyone with dignity. I paid my own way through college, and I started my business, an organic grocery and health store, out of sheer determination and stubbornness. When I met Ronan, my ex, I was in my late 20s. He was charming in that bookish, quiet way. Smart. Good listener. When we met, he was working in Boston but had come back for a few months to help his mother settle his late father's estate. We met at a community fundraiser. He complimented my no-frills table of homemade jams and locally sourced granola bars. That meant a lot to me, even though I later realized he probably said things like that all the time. Ronan and I fell in fast. He appreciated my work ethic, at least at first, said I was refreshing. I thought he understood my world. I was wrong. I didn't meet his family until 6 months in. He wasn't hiding me exactly. But when I finally did, I understood the delay. His mother, Vivienne, was a presence, immaculate. The kind of woman who wears Chanel to brunch and always has a martini glass in arm's reach, even at home. She shook my hand like she was trying not to touch anything sticky. That's not me projecting. I saw her check her palm afterward. His sister, Delilah, was younger than us, blonde, beautiful, and openly patronizing. She asked me if I was one of those co-op people who doesn't believe in freezers. She laughed at her own joke. I smiled politely. I want to be clear, I was never rude, never pushy. I brought flowers when I visited, always offered to help in the kitchen, sent thank you notes. But it was like none of it landed. I was from a different world, and they weren't interested in crossing over. Despite that, Ronan proposed. We got married at a vineyard. His mother offered to pay for the venue and curate the guest list. That should have been a red flag, but I wanted peace. I wanted a fresh start. The tension with his family never really went away. I was always the girl who worked in groceries, as if I bagged produce instead of running a full operation with 30-plus employees and 2 locations. When I brought things to family dinners, handmade candles, small-batch syrups, whatever, I'd hear comments like, "How rustic," or "It smells like the farmer's market exploded." Again, never outright rude, but always a dig, always a dismissal. Over time, I began expanding my business. Quietly. I didn't share much with Ronan's family because, frankly, I didn't think they'd care. I sold part of my company to a regional chain. I retained majority ownership, but the deal gave me enough liquid capital to make a few personal dreams real. I didn't make a show of it. I still drove my old Subaru, still shopped at consignment stores. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone, but my marriage, it didn't survive. At some point, Ronan started coming home late, drinking more. We stopped having real conversations. I asked him if something was wrong. He'd say no, then disappear into his phone. I chalked it up to stress. Then one night, he didn't come home at all, said he stayed with a friend. A month later, I saw a message pop up on our shared iPad, a name I didn't recognize. I opened it. It wasn't just an affair, it had been going on for a year. They'd even gone on trips together while I thought he was at conferences. I confronted him. He didn't deny it. Just said he wasn't happy, that I was too focused on work, that he felt small next to me. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just said okay, we divorced, amicably on paper, but it broke something in me. Vivienne didn't call. Delilah posted some cryptic quote on Facebook about people showing their true colors. I blocked them both. Now here's where things get, well, cinematic. 3 months post-divorce, I got a message from Delilah. She was hosting a small gathering on the bay, and Vivienne would be there. She thought it would be nice to reconnect, no hard feelings. I knew immediately it was bait. I could feel it through the carefully chosen words, but I said yes. Why? Part curiosity, part closure, and part of me wanted to remind them that their little jabs didn't leave scars. I wasn't that girl anymore. The yacht was docked in St. Michael's. Sleek, understated, and beautiful, just how I liked it. I arrived early. I watched Vivienne step on board in her white linen and diamonds. Delilah followed in wedges, sipping something pink. They greeted me like I was a neighbor they barely recognized. The other guests, people I'd seen at their parties before, were polite but dismissive. I was handed a drink, a flute of something sparkling. I stood near the railing, watching the water, when Delilah sidled up next to me. She looked me over, top to bottom, and said, "Just try not to spill anything, okay? I know you're not really used to this level of class." I turned, smiled, and replied simply, "That's funny. This is actually my yacht." She blinked. "Wait, what?" Before I could say more, the captain approached, tipped his cap, and said, "Good afternoon, Miss Langford. Ready to depart when you are." Silence. From everyone, I sipped my drink. Delilah laughed, but it was hollow. "You're kidding." I didn't answer. Vivienne stepped forward, color draining from her face. "You bought the Caraway?" "I renamed her Serena," I said. "After my grandmother, she was the one who taught me to save every penny." The entire energy of the deck shifted. People started murmuring. A few nodded toward me, whispering. Vivienne sat down quickly and said she wasn't feeling well. Delilah made a show of checking her phone and realizing she had a call to take. I stayed, sat in the sunshine, let the wind tangle my hair. I didn't gloat. I didn't say another word. But I will never forget the way it felt to have the captain salute me while they stood there, stunned. That silence was worth more than any monologue I could have delivered. I stayed on the upper deck of Serena, quietly nursing a second glass of sparkling rosé that one of the crew had poured. The sea breeze carried the sounds of low, awkward conversations among the remaining guests. Most were polite enough to avoid commenting, but I saw the flickers of recognition in their eyes. It was like I had shape-shifted in front of them. One moment the grocery girl from the farmer's market, the next, the owner of the very yacht they were socializing on. I watched as Vivienne remained seated in a stiff upright posture, legs crossed, hands clutched in her lap like she was holding onto her pearls for dear life. Her eyes flicked toward me every now and then, but quickly darted away when I caught her gaze. Delilah, on the other hand, hadn't reappeared since she dramatically took her call. I assumed she was below deck or possibly texting someone about the humiliation. For me, there wasn't much satisfaction in proving them wrong. It wasn't about that. But there was peace in letting the facts speak. I didn't need to say I made it. I didn't need to defend myself anymore. Their assumptions had dissolved under the weight of reality. After a while, a woman named Margaret, someone I'd only briefly met before at one of Vivienne's fundraisers, came and sat beside me. She was older, probably in her mid-60s, with silver hair tied back in a soft bun and clear, intelligent eyes. "I had a feeling this boat wasn't theirs," she said quietly, smiling behind her sunglasses. I turned slightly, surprised. "Why's that?" "They've always made a habit of showing off things that don't belong to them. This was different. I could tell by the way you stepped on board." I chuckled lightly. "Guess it's hard to pretend comfort when you've actually earned it." She gave a short nod, sipped her drink. "You didn't need to say a word. That's how I knew it was yours." It was the only real conversation I had that afternoon, and somehow, that was enough. By the time the boat returned to dock, most of the guests had either left or made strained attempts to say goodbye without acknowledging the elephant in the marina. Delilah resurfaced briefly to wave off a few guests, avoiding my eyes. Vivienne, ever the polished matriarch, stood near the gangway and gave me a curt nod. No apology, no attempt at civility. Just that same tight smile she always wore when she didn't know what else to do. I stepped off the yacht with quiet grace, gave instructions to the crew for maintenance and storage, then walked to my car. I could feel their eyes on me as I backed out of the lot in my dusty old Subaru, a car that somehow seemed more powerful than any status symbol in that moment. Later that evening, as I sat in my kitchen sipping chamomile tea, I received a text from Ronan. Just a single line, "Heard about the yacht. Wow." No apology, no check-in, just wow. I didn't reply. A few days passed. I figured that would be the end of it. But then the ripples began. Margaret, the woman I'd spoken to on the yacht, sent me an email inviting me to a local businesswomen's panel she was hosting in DC. Apparently, she'd looked me up. She said she'd been curious about the quiet woman with the big boat and calm eyes. I accepted. Then I started noticing more social media attention, small things. Mentions in the local press about successful women entrepreneurs in the region. My inbox is filled with interview requests. At one point, a producer from a local radio show contacted me about a segment on women-owned businesses in Maryland. I didn't share any of this with Vivienne or Delilah. I wasn't interested in throwing it in their faces, but something told me they knew. The shift was too visible. I had become part of the very circles that once excluded me, not by infiltrating them, but by simply existing, succeeding, and not making excuses for either. What came next was subtle but telling. Vivienne sent me a holiday card. She had never sent me one before, even when I was married to Ronan. It was elegant, understated, and completely impersonal. Inside, there was a handwritten note. "Hope you're well, would love to talk sometime. Let me know if you're ever in the area." There was also a check enclosed for $250, labeled for yacht upkeep. I almost laughed. I mailed it back. No note, just the check folded neatly in half. A week after that, I received an invitation to Delilah's birthday party. Hand-delivered. Cream-colored envelope, wax seal, all the flair of a Jane Austen novel. No mention of the yacht day, no acknowledgement of the subtle humiliation she had orchestrated. I didn't RSVP. I suppose it would have been expected to show up, to prove again that I belonged. But I had already proven everything I needed to, and I wasn't interested in re-entering their curated world of appearances and shallow applause. Instead, I began hosting small dinners on Serena. Friends, local small business owners, artists, people who had supported me before any titles or press. We'd watch the sunset over the bay, eat food from my store, and laugh about ridiculous things like bad signage or staff drama. The yacht wasn't a trophy. It was a sanctuary. And the more I used it to create meaningful connections, the more I realized how little I missed trying to earn respect from people who never intended to give it. But that wasn't the end of it. Not by far. A few months after the yacht incident, something unexpected happened. Ronan asked to meet. He sent a longer message this time, said he'd been thinking a lot, said he'd made mistakes, and wanted to apologize in person if I'd let him. I stared at the message for a while before responding. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. That's when everything began to unravel for them. I wasn't sure why I agreed to meet Ronan. Maybe a part of me wanted to see if the remorse was real. Or maybe I wanted closure, not from the pain he caused, but from the version of myself that once clung so tightly to him. We met at a small cafe in Eastport, near the water. I chose the location. Public, casual, no chance for drama. When I arrived, he was already seated outside, fidgeting with a coffee cup and looking older than I remembered. His once neatly combed hair was unkempt, his usual confident posture slightly slumped. When he saw me, he stood up awkwardly. "Ariel," he said, like it was something delicate in his mouth. "Ronan," I nodded. I didn't smile. He started off with small talk. How was business? How was the store? How's the weather? I let him meander, sip his coffee, and avoid the point. Eventually, I raised an eyebrow. "You wanted to say something." He paused. "I made a mistake." I didn't respond. I waited. I thought I needed someone different. Someone who fits into that world. You know how my family is. I let their opinions get in my head. "That's one way to frame it," I said evenly. He looked down. "I was wrong. You were the one building something. You had a purpose, drive, I see it now. And I see how little they've built, just inherited everything and judged people who didn't." There it was, a glimpse of the truth, but it was too late. "I'm sorry, Ariel." "For everything," I gave a small nod. "Thank you, I hope you mean that." "I do, I've thought about you a lot, especially after the yacht. God, they're still talking about it." I tilted my head. "Is that what this is about?" "No, yes, maybe partly. I realized I've been trying to measure my life with other people's rulers. You were always enough, and I didn't see it until I lost you." There was a time when those words would have undone me. But now they didn't land the same. "I hope you find someone who teaches you how to value things before they're gone," I said gently. He nodded again, quietly. We parted without drama. No tears, no lingering looks. I walked away feeling lighter. Over the next few months, things took an unexpected turn with Vivienne and Delilah. It started with Margit, the woman from the yacht. She invited me to speak at a women's entrepreneurial panel in DC. The theme: Underestimated No More, Women Who Weren't Taken Seriously Until They Couldn't Be Ignored. The title alone made me laugh. I told my story in a quiet, honest way. No drama, no name-dropping, just the facts. My background, my struggles, the business, and what it meant to build something from scratch while others stood by and doubted me. The speech went semi-viral. A clip was shared across a few social media platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok even, and it caught attention in some local circles. Suddenly, I was receiving invitations to join boards, collaborate on community projects, and consult for startups. One day, my assistant forwarded me an email. "Dear Miss Langford, I'm reaching out on behalf of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Gala. We would be honored to have you serve as a keynote speaker at this year's event. We believe your journey perfectly embodies resilience, entrepreneurship, and modern leadership." The event, hosted annually by none other than Vivienne's beloved charity board. I almost declined. Almost. But then I thought, no, I'll go, not to gloat, not to rub anything in, but to stand, with grace, in the space they always tried to deny me. When I arrived at the gala, the air buzzed with that old familiar tension, polished heels clicking across marble floors, laughter just a touch too loud, compliments laced with competition. I wore a simple black dress, no designer label, just a family heirloom necklace from my grandmother, Serena. When I took the stage, I saw them both, Vivienne at a front table, Delilah to her right. Their faces are unreadable. I spoke for 15 minutes. I talked about legacy, not the kind handed down, but the kind built with blistered hands and sleepless nights. About dignity, self-worth, and how success isn't always loud. It's steady, patient, and powerful when earned. When I stepped off stage, people stood, not everyone, but enough. Afterward, Vivienne approached me. Her voice was low, controlled. "You spoke well." "Thank you." There was a pause, then, "You've done well for yourself." "I have," I said simply. She looked like she wanted to say more, but didn't. Delilah, for her part, hovered nearby but didn't speak to me. She gave me a nod, brittle and forced, and that was enough. I left the gala before dessert. I didn't need a toast or a trophy. I had my piece. Back on Serena that night, I sat with a glass of wine under the stars. The air was quiet. The bay lapped softly against the hull. I thought about how far I'd come, not just from the marriage, but from the younger version of myself who wanted so badly to be liked by people who saw her as less. Now, I was no one's second choice. No one's afterthought. I was the woman with the yacht, yes. But more importantly, I was the woman who didn't need to prove she belonged. She just did.